If you've ever watched Stranger Things and thought Joyce feels exactly like my anxious brain, you are not imagining it.
Larry!
Joyce!
There's a reason she feels so real. There's a life behind that panic. And here's why that matters to you. Winona's story shows what happens when the parts of yourself that feel like too much, the worry, the sensitivity, the intensity, stop being things you try to hide and start becoming the things that make you powerful. But to fully understand this, we gotta go back and look at how Winona's private anxiety exploded into a public crisis. One that happened long before we ever met her in Hopkins, years before she picked up those Christmas lights.
Are you alive?
Winona Ryder hit a wall anxious people know well. She was exhausted, emotionally, physically, creatively, overworked, pulled in too many directions, unable to sleep. She was the face of the 90s, living in hotel rooms and film trailers, pretending she was fine while falling apart on the inside. After a painful breakup and months of insomnia, she was prescribed a cocktail of medication.
You know, I wouldn't sleep, and I'd make things extra dramatic in my life.
Years later, she'd say her judgment felt clouded, like she was underwater but expected to breathe normally. One night, she fell asleep with a lit cigarette in her hand. She woke up in flames. This was a human nervous system collapsing under weight it was never built to carry. The kind of collapse that doesn't announce itself until it explodes. This is the moment her anxiety became impossible to outrun.
I used to think, especially when I was a teenager, that there was a sort of school of thought where you had to suffer to be a good actress, and you had to know what that felt like, and you end up subconsciously doing that to yourself. I remember being told, you don't have to do that. Like, you know, that was like very liberating. I remember I kind of learned that through therapy, that it's valid.
But it wasn't the most dramatic. That story begins decades earlier. Winona was born in Minnesota.
I was born in a farmhouse in Winona, Minnesota. That's true. And I was what they called a shoelace baby. I was a little early. And back in '71, what you did is you boiled a shoelace to tie off the umbilical cord.
But grew up on a commune with no electricity.
You know, it was boring because there was no electricity, no running water, no heat, no.
It was quiet, imaginative. A place where introspection wasn't just allowed, it was normal. But when Winona was 10, her family moved. And that's when the world she entered didn't match the one she came from. During her first week of junior high, she wore a thrifted boy's suit. A group of kids cornered her, called her a homophobic slur, slammed her head into a locker, and kicked her until she needed stitches. She had fractured ribs. But the school didn't punish the attackers. They had Winona stay home instead, essentially telling her the victim was the problem. If you've ever internalized the idea that you're too much, that you feel too deeply, that you're somehow responsible for other people's cruelty, you already understand Winona better than most.
And I was the new kid, and I got beaten up, and then I got kicked out because I was considered a distraction. It's very strange. But so what happened though, because of that, is I was put on home study. So I would get all my schoolwork on Monday for the week, and I'd do it all in one day. And I had the whole
4
week.
days free.
Yeah, and so I was so restless. And at that time, I really wanted to be a writer because my parents were writers, and so but then that wore out. And then my parents said, well, why don't you go into the city 3 times a week, which was half-hour away, and go to acting class.
She later describes herself as too sensitive for this world. But that same sensitivity works on Karen.
I was downstairs from the theater. There's Salmagundi's. They have that in New York. I don't know. It's like a diner.
Yeah.
And I was eating soup, and a casting director saw me in the window, and I got my first movie. So it was really because of these kids who beat me up and got me kicked out of school that...
She's cast in Lucas. She was acting like someone who had lived through disappointment, through emotional overwhelm, through the lonely heartache of trying to make sense of the world.
Casting director who later became a producer. I was in the middle of doing a reading for her, and she stopped me and she said, listen, you are not pretty enough to be an actress. You have to find something else that you want to do. because you're not going to make it.
Then Tim Burton cast her in Beetlejuice. As Lydia, she's a teenager who sees more than everyone else, who feels more than the adults around her, who stands slightly outside the world she's forced to live in. Her breakout roles weren't just characters, they were mirrors. By the early 90s, she was everywhere. Heathers, Edward Scissorhands, Reality Bites, Little Women. Francis Ford Coppola, who directed Dracula, said her eyes were full of life experience she shouldn't have at that age. And then there was Girl Interrupted.
Despite his talent, despite Angelina's talent, despite all the talent that you see on the screen, as well as the talent behind the screen, this is your movie.
Well,
I mean, this movie, you had this movie made.
Confronting mental illness head on.
It doesn't matter, where you are in your life. Panic attacks can kind of strike anyone at any time. It really is a condition, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's something that, like, with me, when I had them, I felt horribly guilty because I felt like, oh, I have everything. I'm so lucky. I'm so blessed. I have, how could I shouldn't complain about. I felt like shouldn't complain about anything, and here I was terrified, getting these, like, I wouldn't call them seizures, but like these gripping. My heart races, my palms sweat. I can't move. It's like that feeling when you're on an airplane and you want to get off and you get off and it's like that, only you're not on an airplane. You're
You're in the mall.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, I was usually in the mall going, woo, gotta get out of here.
Yeah,
I'm sweating like a sauna.
The way she describes them in the book is so beautiful, because it's like what I've always wanted. The worst thing about a panic attack is that you can't explain it to people.
Right.
And she explains it. And so when I finally read this, I was like, that's exactly what I've been trying to explain to my family, my friends.
Magazine covers calling her the luckiest girl in the world.
I used to drive around at night and listen to music because I couldn't sleep. And I was driving around and I was wishing so badly that I had someone to talk to, a friend, someone, and I didn't. And I saw this magazine stand, outdoor magazine stand, and I saw myself on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, and it said something like, Winona Ryder, the luckiest girl in the world. And it broke my heart, because there I was, in so much pain, and feeling so confused, feeling so lost in my life. I wasn't allowed to complain because I was so lucky, and I was so blessed, and I made a lot of money, and my problems weren't real problems, and if I'm as nauseated as the next person when actors complain about their lives. We are blessed, we are lucky. But the stuff that I was going through was difficult.
But here's what people forget. Fame doesn't soothe anxiety, it amplifies it.
I was doing The House of the Spirits, this movie, and we were doing a sequence where I am being interrogated and tortured and beaten and raped. And I realized that that's how I felt on the inside. I felt completely beat up by myself, that I was kind of torturing myself. And
about who you are?
Yeah, about feeling like I didn't belong in the world, feeling incredibly alienated and alone, and this sort of piercing loneliness that was just sort of heartbreaking, and I was having these sort of horrible anxiety attacks.
She worked constantly, filming one movie while promoting another.
I was really freaking out. I remember really being so terrified of letting anybody around me know, like any of my coworkers or the cast that I was working with. I didn't want anyone to think I was crazy, and I felt like I was going crazy.
Her sensitivity, the thing that makes her brilliant on camera, makes life overwhelming. And behind the scenes, it was getting worse. On December 12, 2001, Winona is arrested at Saks Fifth Avenue department store in Beverly Hills. She was accused of shoplifting over $5,500 of designer merchandise, including a Marc Jacobs cashmere sweater. The incident was surreal from the start. Her defense attorneys alleged that the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office was dramatically overzealous because they refused to let Saks drop the case and pushed for a felony charge, turning a minor crime into a spectacle public trial. Fashion magazines discussed her courtroom style like it was runway week. She showed up in Marc Jacobs, the designer of one of the items she was accused of stealing. Jacobs publicly supported her through the process. She appeared in court wearing an expression that said, "I'm here because I have to be." And people responded by making Free Winona t-shirts. Her attorneys argued that her extreme physical and psychological exhaustion, compounded with a cocktail of prescription drugs she was taking for pain and insomnia, left her severely impaired, confused, and incapable of forming criminal intent. She said, "Psychologically, I must have been in a place where I wanted to stop." Her anxiety had outrun her coping mechanism. But after the trial, Winona stopped sprinting. Director Woody Allen admitted he wanted to cast Winona Ryder and Robert Downey Jr. in his film Melinda Melinda. But because of their respective troubles, Winona's legal issues and Robert Downey Jr.'s drug arrests, the studio couldn't get insurance on them. This wasn't a case of Hollywood losing interest, but it was a moment to slow down.
You know, people have been acting a little strange around here. You know, there's like a lot of locking of doors and shifty eyes and a lot of frisking.
Word!
Tracy?
Word! Yo, I know how you feel. Those dudes are always following me around, man. Makes you feel like I'm at a Korean grocery store and I work here.
It's weird. To my face, everyone's so sweet and nice, but I always feel like someone's looking over my shoulder.
Yeah, they're all nice to your face. Because they don't want you to know that they installed security cameras this week.
She moved to San Francisco. She reconnected with old friends. She read, listened to music, let herself be quiet. She once said she was grateful to not be the center of attention in the early 2000s. She took supporting roles and made indie films. Mr. Deeds, The Scanner Darkly, The 10, Star Trek, Black Swan, and when the Duffer Brothers began writing Stranger Things, Joyce Byers wasn't a fully realized character. She was just the mom. But as they shaped the world of Hawkins, the 80s nostalgia, the supernatural dread, they realized they needed more than an actress. They needed a genre icon from the 80s and 90s, and they thought of Winona. She was Lydia in Beetlejuice, Veronica Sawyer in Heathers. She was the definitive face of outsider kids. She was the goth and the anxious rebel, and they needed someone who knew viscerally what it felt like to feel too much. Someone whose nervous system had lived in the margins of panic and belief.
I pretty much, the first 5 out of the 8 episodes, I'm pretty hysterical. As I think any parent would be.
For sure, yeah.
She was the emotional center of the world they were building.
Maybe I am a mess. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm out of my mind. But God help me, I will keep these lights up until the day I die if I think there's a chance that Will's still out there.
Joyce Byers feels different because she's not played from the outside, she's played from the inside. Urgency, the fear, the stubbornness, that's lived experience. And for many of us, it's familiar. Maybe your biggest fear is that your own anxiety or self-sabotage will be the thing that betrays your biggest dream. Winona Ryder understood that fear better than anyone, but she channeled it. She took all that sensitivity and poured it into Joyce Byers. Maybe your challenge isn't to silence the chaos. Maybe it's to channel that conviction into creation, into leadership, into your own definition of greatness. Our defining moments are waiting for us to stop fearing ourselves and start choosing our power. And if you got something out of this video, you should watch this one next.